And just a couple more things I want to go over while we're talking about this fundraiser that we have. Sheldon, you mentioned one of the topics that I thought was most interesting. It was first brought to my attention. It had to have been Harry Brown a number of years ago. This is the concept of when history begins. What should people know about reading headlines and discussing a date when history begins?
I did write an article about that a few weeks ago in connection with Ukraine, but you just see this over and over and over again. 9/11, you can go back. Look, most Americans aren't reading history, certainly not the history of war, foreign policy, related things related to that. And so when some big headline event occurs, aided by the news media and the politicians, because of their interests involved, there's this impression left that things began the day before the big headline. Now with the 24-hour news and the internet and everything, it's the same day as the headline. You see the headline, maybe moments after something breaks. So, when Russia invaded Ukraine in what was it, February 24th? Was it? Lots of people, even though there had been recent news and therefore recent history about it going back to 2014, but for a lot of people that's long forgotten if they were paying attention. Everybody wants to know, okay, explain beginning from February 24th why Putin or Russia has invaded Ukraine and what happens about it. Well, if you explain, you could go back to 2014 and look at the U.S. inspired coup, underwritten coup, and then they'll maybe go to the invasion of Crimea and say history began basically with respect to this on that date. And this happens over and over again. So our task, which is not easy, is because we got to get people's attention, is to say, wait a second, it does go back further, and you're going to need a little bit of patience to hear the story, whether it's in a short article or a book. And lots of people just don't read books, but that's the problem, getting people to focus on not the day that the big headline broke and the latest big thing happened, but all these things always have history. They always exist in a context. Things like this don't happen out of the blue. I mean, not out of the blue is kind of the 9/11 attitude of most people, right? Just one day we've been minding our own business, and one day some guys decided to fly planes into the towers and hit the Pentagon and so on. And all of us who were involved back then know how difficult it was even to get friends and relatives to realize that we weren't just minding our own business and this was out of the blue, which is not to justify the actions taken by those 19 people and the people backing them on 9/11. But you can't understand things at all if you're only going to start with the one act. So that's what that means.
Kyle Anzalone, one of the major stories everywhere you turn on the news is the war between Russia and Ukraine that I guess started in February of this year. Is that an accurate portrayal of events? Fill us in on what we need to know about Ukraine that NBC isn't telling us.
I mean, there's a lot, and I know Scott's working on a book about this, and so that's probably, the full tape. But just real quick, there has been a civil war going on in Ukraine since 2014, and that's pretty important to point out. 15,000 people have died, and no doubt there's been a lot of death in Ukraine over the past month. But if you're looking at what Russia is doing there, they are carrying out an invasion, but it is somewhat limited. They're not just trying to kill every last person. Even the Defense Intelligence Agency has admitted this. And so this is a response from Russia to the Western encroachment and NATO encroachment onto Russian borders. And rather than looking at the reality of the situation for NATO, I just wrote this one for antiwar.com yesterday, that they're planning a massive military buildup. They want to put a force in every single border state with Russia, the Baltic states, Poland, and I'm assuming that they're going to also push this in the Black Sea states like Romania, Slovakia, and Hungary too, where they want to put a NATO force in all these countries capable of preventing a Russian invasion. Now, they're going to claim, oh, this is just defensive, but Russia is going to look at this and say, well, you have a force capable of preventing an invasion in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. That's also a very dangerous offensive capability that could roll across the border. And I don't think they're that far from St. Petersburg, really. Major Russian population centers are not that far from the Baltics. And so this is going to be seen as a huge threat from Russia. And we're only continuing down this same path that led to the war in Ukraine and could very well lead to more conflict.
Check out the Libertarian Institute. For every dollar you donate, it's going to be doubled. I know that is today. I'm not sure how much longer that will last, but you can come across brilliant quotes like this. George Kennan in 1997 warning, expanding NATO would be the most fateful error of American policy in the entire post-Cold War era. So the father of the containment policy is warning against expanding NATO, and the corporate press does not seem too interested in following up on this or interviewing people like Colonel Douglas McGregor. The Libertarian Institute is making sure you have the information. Today, if you donate, we have matching funds for every dollar for the next 20,000. So get yourself a mug or one of these excellent books. Help out the Libertarian Institute. It is tax deductible. So I know it's very tempting to send money to the lying, mass murdering government, but if you want to write it off and get a book instead, that does seem like a more efficient allocation of funds. Scott,